thoughtless minority can blight a whole school. Pushing, shoving, hair-pulling, name-calling, texting rumours and threats, all can make students anxious and unable to work.
The jibes, the nasty comments, the kicks under the table, the nudges, the isolation, the silence. A lot of it, I don't feel, was picked up by the teachers.
This is an all too common experience. According to the NSPCC, 1 in 20 school children is regularly bullied. That's equivalent to more than one child in every class. 400,000 children across the country being routinely, habitually subjected to bullying.
I made someone else's life a misery while they were at school.
While the most extreme cases hit the headlines, it's the continuous low-level bullying that erodes so many students' confidence and ability to engage with learning. The government's taken an increasingly hardline approach, but educationalists are divided on the best way to respond. At the heart of the debate is the question, to punish or not.
If you don't bring it out in the open and actually punish the bullies and help the victims, it will go underground and the victims will never tell again.
I think when we start naming and blaming people for bullying, we run into a whole variety of problems.
To help clarify the issues and complexities of this crucial debate, we hear from some of the key players, as well as personal testimonies of those directly affected. Leela Thomasy is a 25-year-old mother of two. From her teens, she suffered hair loss through alopecia. Passionate about the importance of education, she's chair of governors at her daughter's nursery. But Leela's own education was blighted by bullying, which started on her first day at secondary school.
They picked on my weaknesses. I was very overweight. I had facial hair, which I now bleach. I was beginning to go bald when I was 14 and felt very conscious about that. They used to say, oh, you're ugly and you've got facial hair and baldy and can I shag your beard and you've got no friends and you're never going to have any friends. And at PE time, I remember I used to get undressed and the girls would just look at me and laugh.
Sometimes the bullying was violent. On one occasion, Leela was cornered by two girls who kicked her, scratched her and pulled her hair. A third girl kept lookout. A teacher only intervened afterwards because she saw Leela crying.
Because I was in such a broken down state, she asked what was wrong and it all came spilling out. And that's basically how it happened. If I'd have had a chance to calm down, I don't think I would have gone to a teacher at all.
Leela was never told how the incident was dealt with. The violence stopped, but the intimidation carried on. By the age of 15, she couldn't take it anymore.
I would have liked to have stayed and done my exams. My mum was ill and I was being bullied and felt it was just easier not to go to school anymore. I felt robbed of that because I did want to be something and go somewhere.
David Berry died in 2004 at the hands of two boys from his Dorset school. Such cases are thankfully rare, but his father's views on punishment reflect those of many parents of victims.
They grabbed him and they brought him to this point where we are. He affixed himself to the railings and they prized him off, threw him in. Even though it was being said around them, and obviously they could tell from the look on his face and what he was saying that he couldn't swim.
David's killers were sentenced to prison terms of 8 and 18 months.
I don't feel that the sentences that have been given are enough. That doesn't send a message, that doesn't sort of say, oh, be warned, don't do this. I think it's almost permission to do it, because there's just no gravity at all in those sentences. I think the government needs to look at it as well, because it seems to be something they turn away from.
And the bullying continues, despite a plethora of government initiatives. Since 1999, schools have been required to have an anti-bullying policy. In 2002, the government updated its information pack, Don't Suffer in Silence. A year later, it launched a charter for action against bullying.
We've been very clear that we want to have a zero-tolerance attitude to bad behaviour throughout schools. I'm very clear that bullying is wrong. I think we should say that. And as we've made clear in our guidance, there are a whole range of different strategies and punishments that it's appropriate to use when bullying happens. I think in very many schools now they're completely clear about it as well. We've made a lot of progress, I think, in the last few years in saying we don't accept bullying. It's not a normal part of growing up, and all of us, government, schools, parents and governors and young people, have a responsibility to stamp it out.
On top of this, 2004 saw the first ever Anti-Bullying Week, designed to ram home the message, if you're being bullied, tell someone. It raised a huge response to the 60 charities of the Anti-Bullying Alliance, yet simply raising awareness and saying it's wrong doesn't make the problem go away.
The calls to childline in that year went up enormously. We had a 42% increase. Up to 31,000 children were counselled that year on the subject of bullying alone. And we would hope that that's really about an increased reporting of bullying, more children feeling that they can speak out and seek help, rather than actual increase in bullying going on in schools.
The scale of the problem was graphically highlighted by an incident during that first Anti-Bullying Week. Caught on CCTV, 40 girls were excluded in a single mass suspension. Their head teacher described it as mob rule.
What started out as a fairly minor argument or dispute between two girls turned into quite an unpleasant incident because of other girls watching. They weren't bullying, they didn't intend to bully, but they were condoning what was turning into a bullying incident by just being there.
You know, when there's an argument or a fight, everyone automatically just crowds round. So obviously I went over to see what was going on because my friend who I was waiting for was involved. And I didn't know what to think, really. I didn't know what to do. I was a bit confused.
On the video you see me quite clearly going, and they go away, but they're so fascinated by what's going on, they even come back then even when I'm there. And in the end it took me and some other senior members of staff quite some time to move them on. We spent about an hour discussing what we were going to do in our response. We talked to the parents of one of the girls involved who was very shaken up by what had happened, and we decided that we really needed to do something very, very strong, and that we would exclude on a short fixed term basis those pupils involved. And so we did.
I didn't think we'd be suspended. I thought it would just be an after school detention, but when we got told we were going to be suspended, I was really shocked because I actually didn't do anything wrong, but then I realised I didn't do anything right.
They were a bit shocked, but they did respond very well. I don't know if we had everybody, because I don't know if they all volunteered or not. If they didn't, they will live with that with the rest of their lives, won't they?
But I think it was good that we were suspended because it made us realise that we didn't do anything to help.
Exclusion is the ultimate sanction. In 2003, there were more than 350,000 exclusions from English schools. Nearly 10,000 were permanent. Kidscape promotes exclusion. However, director Michelle Elliott worries that excluded pupils could cause trouble elsewhere.
The problem is that we don't have the places for these kids to go. I understand that there are about 10,000 children who've been excluded in this way. I mean, we all know of the out-of-control youth who are out in the neighborhood, and if you look at a lot of those kids, they are kids who have been excluded. And that's not teaching them not to be bullies.
But the government refutes the suggestion that pupils excluded for bullying are just left to roam.
We've massively increased the provision for excluded children. It's true that, for example, when we came into government, there was very little of it. It's a condition at the moment that from the 16th day of exclusion, and most exclusions are actually for 2 or 3 days, so, you know, we're not in this situation, that provision needs to be made for them, like a pupil referral unit or other, where actually their behaviour can be addressed so that they don't go back and do it again. But of course, one of the things we asked the group led by Sir Alan Steer looking at behaviour to consider is whether or not we ought to change that, and we'll of course be putting into operation their recommendations.
The Steer report was published shortly after we recorded this interview. It recommended the 16-day wait for alternative provision should be reduced to 6. Parents should be responsible for supervising their children for the first 5 days, if necessary, enforced by parenting orders. And it states that schools should make their anti-bullying policies clear.
We've asked Ofsted to talk to parents and pupils about how well they think a school deals with bullying. We've put in place both additional money and support through the Anti-Bullying Alliance, through our own guidance and packs to support schools in tackling that. But I know that there's still more that we've got to do, and I know schools know that as well.
Schools also know that reintegrating excluded pupils can be problematic. With 40 girls returning to Glenmore, Pam Orchard brought in an educational psychologist.
She was a great help. She could take girls and work through their feelings with them if they were very angry or they didn't understand. So what we did was brought all the girls into the hall and spent some time talking to them about what it was that we'd found unacceptable, why we'd taken the action that we had taken, that they weren't forever branded as anything, and that we hoped that we could now draw a line under it, and that they were going to get on with their schooling, and that was really what we wanted them to do. The vast majority of the girls are still here in the school in Year 11 and are doing really well. I've just awarded prefect badges to many of them, and they are a real credit to the school.
With 2 of the girls excluded last year now leading lights in the school council, Glenmore's tough approach appears to have paid off for the bystanders of bullying in any case. Faye, now head girl, and Kate, a prefect, are heading up the school council's anti-bullying working party, analysing a whole school questionnaire.
We're hoping to see especially where the bullying has happened so that we can distribute our prefects, especially like say if it's on the corridor or on the stairs, and make sure like all the younger pupils are fine.
And the schools also implemented a variety of other strategies.
We have what we call the pink box, where any pupil in the school, if they're a little bit worried about talking to somebody or approaching a member of staff, they can quite discreetly put a little note into the pink box. In one of our portable classrooms outside, which is easily accessible at break and lunchtime, that's monitored by the pupil support team, and any pupil who feels a little bit vulnerable, doesn't know where to go maybe on their own, can go into that room, and there are games and activities that they can play, and they can talk to any member of the pupil support team.
However, there are still key times when the school might seem daunting to younger pupils.
It's difficult because there's a lot of overcrowding in the school. The corridors certainly at lesson changeover time and break time are very, very busy. And sometimes things happen that are not always intentional.
Sometimes particular pupils can seem intimidating. Glenmore gave one such group the chance to change their image by helping the very pupils they used to frighten.
Because we're quite loud and they found us quite intimidating, and we got a presence when we walked down the hallway, so I think that's why.
Well, I'm not a small person anyway, and we're not exactly quiet girls, and we just go around the corridors, and the younger Year 7s obviously look up to us, and we're like twice the height of them, so obviously they're going to be scared of us in some way.
Now we help in the canteen quite often, and we just talk to them, get to know them so they know us.
We had a bad reputation about bullies, and we apparently intimidated other people, the little Year 7s. But now we help the Year 7s, so they know us as a welcome face rather than a big bully.
Feels better than what it did when we felt like we was bullying them, because we had like teachers on our backs all the time. But now we get the teachers saying like thanks for this and thank you for stuff.
We're not bullies.
We're not bullies. We're just kind, friendly girls.